So let's get started. My name is Mary Eleanor Power, and I welcome everyone. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications for Dalhousie University's College of Continuing Education, and really delighted that you could be here today. I would like to begin by acknowledging that Dalhousie University is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We are all treaty people. And I'd also like to welcome Dr. Darren Downing, who will be leading us through today's webinar on Microcredentialing Basics. So Darren has 20 years of experience as a lecturer and an administrator. He has worked in Uzbekistan, California, the UAE, and Canada. Darren has an MA in TESOL Linguistics from California State University of Fresno and a doctorate in education from the University of Calgary. He currently works at Dalhousie University with our English Language Studies group and is also most recently taken a role as program manager of our microcredentialing work that we're doing at the college. So over to you, Darren, and I would encourage anyone, Darren is happy to kind of pause and take questions, but we'll certainly leave some time at the end. But if you have any questions or points of clarification, please feel free to add them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll be happy to answer them. So Darren, over to you.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Hopefully you can all hear me. I am the pilot project manager for microcredentialing at Dalhousie. So right now, Dalhousie, we are piloting microcredentials, and we're doing it with a whole bunch of different courses and learning experiences. So we're not just like piloting it with one single course. We're actually trying it with a large variety of different types of courses. So we'll talk a little bit more about that pilot project also as we go through. If you have any questions, feel free to just pop them into the chat as soon as you have them, or ask me. You can turn on your mic and just interrupt me. That's fine. I don't have any other plans, so I have no problem stopping and spending more time on any sections that people are interested in. Let's get started. All right, so is everybody familiar with what microcredentials are? Right? There's a lot of confusion actually out there with what are microcredentials. And when I say confusion, I actually mean debate. People have different ideas, especially when we talk about digital badges and microcredentials. So some people put microcredentials as a subset of digital badges. And maybe you've heard that term before, digital badges. What is a digital badge, right? And some people put digital badges as a subset of microcredentials. Some people put them as two separate things. Some people say that they're the same thing with two different names. So there's a lot of, as you explore the literature, you might actually start finding out that, okay, wait, this person's talking about digital badges, but they're treating them like I think of microcredentials, or vice versa, right? So people, as you look at the literature, you're going to have to kind of define what are microcredentials to you, what are digital badges to you, and decide what definition you want to use. For me, what I like to, how I like to think of it is I like to think of microcredentials as a kind of an educational focused credentialing program. So with some kind of backing, with some kind of institution perhaps, or some kind of authority that is a smaller version of a large, or a smaller portion that will often be inside of a larger degree, but doesn't have to be. Digital badges, on the other hand, I've decided to think of as the diploma version, right? It's that paper that you get at the very end of completing a microcredential program. So when I talk about digital badges, I'm going to be talking about the actual architecture and the image and the actual thing that you give to the students. Whereas microcredentials is the actual program and what they learn and what they do. So microcredentials are a way to recognize education in smaller units. This has the benefit of students can begin a course, perhaps they are working on a master's degree, and as they're going through their master's degree, they do activities or they do portions of their courses that earn them microcredentials. And you could set it up so that these are mandatory as part of the course, you're going to earn these microcredentials. It could also be set up by the institution to be optional microcredentials that can be earned as you go through. And the nice thing is that the microcredential should be recognized by the industry that is associated with it as being a degree, as being proof of skills, proof of the ability to do a task. And if the student stops their education at that point, they can leave with that microcredential, or maybe they pause their education. They can leave with that microcredential, approach the industry that they're interested in, show them the microcredential, show them that, yes, look, I have proof from an institution that I have this skill, this knowledge. It may not be the full degree, but the employer may say, hey, it's not the full degree. That means we don't have to pay you the full price of somebody with a master's or a doctorate, but we do need your skill. So you get a foot into the industry, you get to practice the skill, you get to make contacts, and then maybe later on you decide to go back into education, into your program, and complete your degree. So it's a lot more flexible than the traditional degrees. So here's the Alberta University of the Arts, which have a micro-credential program, and we'll actually kind of see one of theirs, how they have set it up. The micro-credential programs can be set up in a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of choices to make as you think about, okay, how do I want to create a micro-credential program? Some of them can be very linear. Some of them can be very organic and have a lot of different parts. Some of them can be very short, very black and white, like either you do this and you get that micro-credential or you don't, and there's nothing else around it. So you can have just isolated micro-credential programs if you want. You can have them as part of something larger, and we'll look at that again a little bit later as we go through. So this was actually Alex Usher just put this out a couple days ago, this quote, and I kind of liked it. The likeliest use of micro-credentials will be to provide shorter bursts of bachelor's professional training, allowing people to acquire relevant white-collar skills from a variety of domains. Individuals will be able to build DIY portfolios of micro-credentials to demonstrate mastery of diverse skill knowledge sets which fit their employment goals, rather than rely on institutions to do that packaging for them. That gives you kind of an idea of what the idea is behind micro-credentials. So this is the Alberta University of the Arts micro-credential program here, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. So you can see how theirs is set up. So they've got 4 different micro-credentials in this program. And at the end, you can earn, if you do all 4, so you got that teal, orange, yellow, red. If you do all 4 of those programs, you earn 4 different micro-credentials and you get your entrepreneurship certificate. But if you are only interested in doing the finance for arts business micro-credential, you can just do that one in the orange, which to get that micro-credential, you would have to do the personal finance course, the business finance course, and 3 workshops that are 14 hours of workshops. So, and those are the 3 workshops. That would get you that 1 micro-credential. And at a later time, maybe you want to come back and do some of the other ones, get some other micro-credentials, or do the other 3 and get your entrepreneurship certificate from Alberta University of the Arts. So that's how they have set theirs up. It's one way to do it. Okay, now digital badges, as I talked about, the digital badges are the actual, what I think of them as the actual badge, the actual picture, with the information that is embedded in it. So all of these pictures, if it is a digital badge attached to a micro-credential, has information embedded in that picture. That means that you can place the picture on your LinkedIn page or on your website or attached to a digital resume. And an employer could click on that picture and get the information. So digital architecture of a micro-credential or a digital badge, that picture will have this information inside of it that can be accessed by the employer or by anyone, really. So it will have who issued it, what the name is that who received it, what was the criteria that they had to complete in order to receive that digital badge, any tags. So if somebody's doing a search, the tags will pop up of and will bring up your resume or your page to say, hey, there's a microcredential with that tag that you were searching for. So you can have digital tags for people to search and find things easier. The recipient who received it, oops, sorry. The evidence, and I'm going to come back to that in a second, and the validation. So these badges are set up through a company, and there's a number of different companies that do this. Credly Acclaim is probably the largest one. Another one is BC Diploma, and these companies are often usually partner or attached to a university or an institution, and that is who runs the back end of these microcredentials. So who collects all this information, who organizes it, right? So the institution might just submit an Excel file with the issuer, the name, the criteria, the tags, and all of this information. You submit the Excel file into this program, and then the program will put it all together into a microcredential with a picture that you have chosen, as well as they will have the actual one that looks like an actual certificate, like a full page one usually. So you have both the little button and the big certificate version of it. Now the evidence, that's actually kind of one of the most important parts of the microcredential, I feel. The evidence is what allows the employer to look at the microcredential and say, this is valuable, this is valid. So you want evidence that you work with the industry. You work with the employers to develop a testing and assessment system and evidence that the employer will accept as being proof of what they're looking for. For example, if you are working with in construction and you have a microcredential for framing a house, right? Your evidence might be photographs of the framing work that a student has done, right, along with maybe an inspection report, so that the employer who's looking at hiring this framer can then click on their microcredential, look at this, click on the evidence, see the pictures of their framing, see detailed images, see an inspection report saying how it went, whatever, anything wrong, anything right, and then they can decide based on that evidence, okay, yeah, I can see why they earned this microcredential. So the evidence is having that evidence embedded into the credential is actually, I think, one of the best things about microcredentials, right? If I show somebody one of my diplomas, they don't really know what I did to get that, right? There's no evidence in there. They just have to base their, judgment on the authority of the institution. So this goes a little bit beyond that and gives evidence. So it's very important when setting up your microcredential to work with an industry, to work with whoever's going to be hiring that skill, in order to make sure that your evidence is something that they will accept. Your criteria is something that they want, right? Don't look at making, I would suggest not look at making microcredentials that don't have value for jobs and for industry. Like if a student earns a microcredential for, attendance, is a business going to look at that and go, oh, well, I need that skill, that they show up every day? Maybe, but probably not. Probably they're more interested in specific abilities. They just assume that somebody's going to show up every day. So make sure that your microcredentials have value to the industry. All right, so University of Calgary has a digital badge program also, and we're going to look at the good and bad a little bit of what they do a little bit later. So they call it a digital badge program. Now again, microcredentials, digital badges, what's the difference? How do different institutions define them? How do different institutions use these things? So this is a digital badge program. How is that different from a microcredential program? Well, I don't know. I would say it seems a little bit more, their program seems more individualized to the different units. So you've got, the Institute for Teaching and Learning, you've got University Relations, you've got Learning Services, Executive Education, Talent Development. So each of these get to go, okay, we get to define it however we want. We get to create our own images. We get to create our own programs and create our own assessments. And they do everything. Each individual thing seems to have their own idea of what it is. And it does not end up being a cohesive program, I would say, looking at the University of Calgary badges. And we'll see that a little bit later. But it looks like initially, like if you look at this, you go, okay, that looks like a cohesive thing. So they kind of put in a top end that looks very nice, and they have different color codes, 3 different color codes for different levels. Okay, that's universal. But then as you go farther in, it becomes very individualized for each institution, and some of them might give these digital badges for presentations, while others give the digital badges for more for larger courses, course completion, right? So there's a lot of differences between the different schools within this institution. Right. So if we look at University of Calgary's digital badges, you can see these here. You've got the same shape. You've also got there are 3 different levels: gold, silver, green, to level 1, level 2, level 3, which is something that you also want to. And you can see that gold here, right? These are all gold. That's something that you want to consider when creating a digital badge: is how many levels do you need, and why do you need the levels? Does level 1 have any meaning? Does level 1 have any value? Or is the only value in level 3, in which case, why have a level 1 that people can earn if there's no value to it? So, but in some cases, you might want level 1, 2, and 3. For example, a carpenter, you have somebody who can do the framing, but maybe they cannot yet do the foundation, right? So level 1, framing. Level 2, framing and foundation. Level 3, framing, foundation, interior. All right. So in that case, you might want 3 different levels. Other cases, you might not want 3 different levels. You might just want 1. Either you have it or you don't. Okay. So some of the benefits to micro-credential programs. By the way, I am going to talk a little bit more about the design of badges coming up. So you can see kind of their different badge designs here, which you have the same shape, basic shape, but you have very different color schemes in it. But actually, if we go into some other schools, this is one school within Calgary. If you go into some other schools, they don't all have the same shape or color schemes, and you end up with a larger variety. But we'll come back to that. All right, why develop a micro-credential program? So recognition of smaller discrete learning accomplishments. We've talked about that, right? You get those just skills that, okay, you have that skill. I can now prove to an employer that I have the skill. I can take that credential to the employer. I don't have to finish my full 2 or 4 or 6-year degree in order to get a foot into the industry that I'm interested in. So you have that recognition of the smaller learning accomplishments. Everybody has different personal learning journeys, right? Some of us start and stop, and then a baby comes along, and then a virus comes out, and then there's murder hornets, and who knows what's going on. So micro-credentials kind of have that flexibility to allow you to start and stop a program and still take value away from it without losing the value when you go back into the program at a later time. They're competency based, so at least they should be. Now, again, different definitions, different ideas. The way that we're trying to put these together, we want all of the micro-credentials to be competency based and validated by the industries. This is what gives them their value and why people would actually want them. So they're competency based, they're verified through evidence-based assessments. So there's evidence that gets embedded into that micro-credential, and then they're validated by the industry that says, yeah, we helped design that, we helped develop that, so we're definitely going to hire people that have it. That's what we want. That's why we encouraged it to go in that direction. So it's very important, if you are designing a micro-credential program, to get the input and the engagement of whatever industry it is that you are a part of, or that you're designing a credential for. Don't just design it based on what you think maybe the industry might want. Actually engage with them and partner with the industry to make sure that you are creating things that are that have real value. So for educational institutions, this does expand a pool of potential students. So students that maybe just want to upskill, they don't want a full degree, they just want to get a few skills to improve their current position. Part-time students, this can often expand that pool. Enhance student retention. So a lot of people, I think, are afraid that micro-credentials will replace maybe larger degrees. And there is some evidence that it actually will enhance student retention, that students will stay with a program for longer if, as they're going through the program, they are earning something. It also gives them the ability to leave the program and come back with taking value with them, and then coming back and re-entering and continuing. It contributes to the institutional brand if you create a micro-credential program that has value. If you create a micro-credential program that just is pretty pictures of badges that don't mean anything, then I don't think it has much to do with the institutional brand. But if you create one that industries are interested in having people with those micro-credentials, then I think it will help the institutions. And it increases the community partnership and engagement when you engage with the industries in creating the micro-credentials that they want. Okay, for learners, there's accessible and affordable learning experiences. So because these are smaller, learners can take a smaller little chunk, take value from it, and then maybe go back, extract that value out at their job site, and then maybe at a later time come back and get another one, right? Take some value from it. Targeted relevant learning experiences, faster time to upskilling, digitally portable, and more flexible learning pathways. So the digitally portable refers to the fact that you can actually move these from one platform to another. Even with, with BC Diploma, which is one of the organizations that creates these micro-credentials, they've actually set it up so that it's open source. It uses blockchain technology, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to create security, but it's open source so that if the company that created and manages these micro-credentials goes out of business, or is bought, or is closed for whatever reason, that micro-credential still contains all of its value and can still just be ported into another platform, or it actually contains its data within the micro-credential itself, and does not require the company that that gave it out to still be around. So digitally portable can be a big benefit. Okay. Benefits for the labor markets. They get a larger pool of prospective employees, and improve quality too, because now they can identify, okay, this employee has these specific skills. It targeted competency gaps. So when you work with the industry, they will say, okay, we are actually looking for people that have this competency. We're not getting it. You can then create a micro-credential for a program associated with that industry to target specific areas that the industry is feeling that it's not receiving employees from your institution with that skill. Okay, relevant to the sector or industry, rapid upskilling, reskilling. Again, digitally secure and portable. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Confidence and competencies are represented. So because the evidence is embedded into that micro-credential, there's a lot more confidence in that, okay, this person really does know this skill. And the collaboration, which is very important. What are the roadblocks to developing a micro-credential program? So creating micro-credentials that have real value can be difficult. So we're going to actually look at some of those, and I've got a list of them here. The assessments are embedded into that micro-credential. So people are going to see how you assess in your program. Right? If you don't want them to see your assessments, if you want these assessments to be hidden and secretive, then it's going to be more difficult to create a micro-credential with a lot of value. So the exposed assessments, some people are may be concerned about that their assessments are exposed. Remember, these should be skills-based assessments, competency-based assessments, so that it's what they can do. So they should be individual assessments, and you shouldn't have to worry about, okay, here's the answers to a test, right? It should be something that that shows an actual competency, not just knowledge of something. All right, creating micro-credentials that have real value is, I think, one of the most important things when you create a micro-credential. Having that value has to be built in. You can't just assume that it's going to have value. You have to actually work at providing value into the micro-credential, and I've spoken about some of the ways to do that. There's technology challenges such as logistics, security, and scalability. I'll get to security shortly. And then there's graphic design challenges, as well as organizational challenges. So we'll talk about some of those too. So the value, that was the first one on that list. Make sure it's linked to one or more competencies. Make sure that it is evidence-based, that you have evidence that you can embed into that micro-credential to ensure that people can see, oh yes, there's why they got this. That's good, I accept that as evidence. Make sure it's validated by an industry. So whatever industry you're going to go into, there's a group, or probably a number of groups, that will be able to validate and give feedback and say, yes, this is a good assessment, this is a good skill. And make sure that employers want that skill. So there's some surveys to send out, I would say, and some contacts to make before you really create your micro-credential, to decide what it is you want your micro-credential to be about. What skills do you want? So make sure that the micro-credential is a competency-based skill. So you've got the theory to application. So competency means that you can actually do the thing that it says. It's an actual, you're competent to use this skill. So ability to successfully apply skills in a real-world setting. In other words, successfully adapting a set of skills under different scenarios. So this is another one of the challenges, though, to creating micro-credentials, is that you have to make sure that you now have an assessment that is competency-based, right? That you're looking at a skill, you've chosen a skill, and now you have to have an assessment that says, okay, we're going to have an assessment that shows whether the skill can be applied to the real world or not. So successfully adapting a set of skills under different scenarios, some kind of test, some kind of real world activity. That's the kind of thing that you want in a micro-credential. Okay, now security, I said I would come back and talk about this. This is my security page. So they are digital image files. Now, with digital image files, people think, well, I can right click on a picture, copy, save as, pull it into my computer. I can then edit that digital image, right? I can change the colors, I can change the size, I can change the name on something. We've seen all sorts of editing. You can even change people's faces from one to another. So they are digital image files, but the data is embedded in the image, it's linked to a provider's website. And there's a couple different systems for doing this. So one is to have a website that uses a cloud-based system that holds the data and uses a password security system in order to access that data remotely. Another, which is, I believe, what Credential Acclaim does. I have to do a little bit more research into how Credential Acclaim works. BC Diploma uses a blockchain technology, so they use the blockchain technology. And they encrypt the data, and it is all kept on the blockchain so that the data is actually then dispersed, basically. And when somebody wants to look at it, it has to be kind of put together again and decrypted. And it cannot then be changed at all. It's actually extremely secure blockchain technology. And it's what Bitcoin uses, blockchain technology to secure Bitcoin. So if you see those people with $1 million of Bitcoin, it's blockchain technology that keeps other people from hitting right click copy and now you have another $1 million, right? So it's that blockchain technology. Now, if you're in Canada, which I think everybody is, Canada has a rule that educational institutions must keep educational data on servers within Canada. What I have been told about the blockchain technology is that because it is anonymized data that is encrypted and dispersed, it is no longer considered educational data. So it no longer applies to that rule of keeping data on servers within the Canadian borders because of how they do it. So that's what I was told by the CEO of BC Diploma when I asked about that. So if you're curious, apparently, and some institutions in Canada do use BC Diploma. So apparently that way of using the blockchain data does kind of get around that rule, and it makes it still extremely secure. Links to verified data make them reliable and secure, and this eliminates the possibility of credentials and identity being stolen. So they are very secure. One of the reasons I think microcredentials are becoming popular now, as opposed to maybe 10 years ago, actually has to do with security. This is something that we now can do fairly easily. We have this security that we didn't have 10 years ago. 20 years ago. We couldn't have done this. We couldn't have kept these diplomas secure and kept people from altering things and changing things, right? Now we can. And so I think this technology is one of the reasons why we're now seeing, oh, wait, we can actually do this from a technological standpoint. All right, let's talk about organizing your microcredentials. So here is a microcredential on the left there. You've got the identified competency in black, and you've got the course and program content in gold. So there's at least here's three different models. There's actually some other ways to do this also, but here's kind of the three basic models of microcredentials. You've got the individual, the stackable, and the nested. So what are those? Let's look at the individual, then we'll go through these in order. So here's the individual model. In the individual model, you just have a course. You finish that course, you get the microcredential. So this may be good for this will be good for a lot of courses, or for I think there's one of the people that is looking at the pilot program is looking at using this kind of model for training peer tutors, right? So you do the peer tutor course, you get your microcredential in peer tutoring, and you're done. So that is the individual model.
Darren, there's just a question here from Laura. She has to leave the session, and she thanks you very much. But she also just makes the point from a labor market perspective. She wonders how or if microcredentialing could replace professional development. In other words, will the employer or institution consider microcredentialing budget for their employees' career advancement, training, or professional development? So not necessarily a question, but more just food for thought for the future.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is it's a thought for the future, because this is still very new. We don't really know how microcredentialing, what the effects are going to be, how people are going to accept it or not accept it, what's going to be the resistance, what's going to be the level of uptake from industries as well as from institutions. There's so many questions around microcredentials right now. I have seen one person predicted that microcredentials will be the end of the master's degree. That you'll still have the bachelor's and you still have the PhD, but it's the master's degree in the middle there that will end up becoming a set of microcredentials. And I think that's a bit extreme, although I tend to go with a body at rest and to stay at rest. So I believe that things don't really change very much in most cases, and that's not always true. So I'm wrong sometimes when I predict that, but my prediction is that it will be kind of a slow uptake by industries and by institutions. It will be a gradual acceptance. There's a lot of employers and a lot of unions that will have say in, oh no, we don't want an additional training because there is financial incentives for the standard training. So things like Red Seal, they might not want a competitor coming along or an alternative credentialing system coming along when they have this established system that works for them, and so there may be conflict there. So it's one of those things. I think we'll just have to see what happens, where it goes, and I think it's going to be a slow process. Basically, is my prediction. Other people have different ideas though, so who knows. All right, so let's this is the individual model. Let's go to the next one now. So this is that stackable model, and I had the the university, we looked at this earlier. This is an example of a stackable model where you've got the separate courses, and each course is its own micro-credential. And then once you do all of the courses, so in this case, all 4 of these courses, you end up with your entrepreneur certificate, which is your macro credential. So the actual end goal. So whether it's a bachelor's, a master's, a certificate, whatever that end goal is, you get it by completing micro credentials. And so it's a nice, easy way to organize for a certificate program. Let's see, Tony, has there been any discussion on certain degrees requiring micro credentials to maintain relevance? Degree in computer science might require regular micro-credentials to keep the degree up to date. I'm sure that that is a concern with some areas, but I think it's still a little early. But I know a lot of people are doing their own micro-credentialing of making sure that they're doing kind of independent training and PD sessions and getting badges, even though they're not micro-credentials, the way that I'm using it. They get little badges for doing their training, and then that keeps them relevant and up to date, especially in industries that move very quickly, such as the technology industry, right? IT, stuff like that. You need to kind of keep showing people that you are continuously learning. And micro-credentials, the way that I'm defining micro-credentials, if they work with the industry, if they if they kind of get that evidence-based and get the backing of the industry, then they can become that more established continuous relevance evidence, right? Whereas currently it's still out there. There's that continuous relevance evidence, but it doesn't have the backing of industries a lot of times. It's just stuff that people do online or they do for free, and there's different programs and they get the little badges, but there's not really any organization that is looking at those and saying, yes, that is a good assessment. You definitely have the skills that it says you have. And because you don't have that yet, currently, I think there's a little bit of apprehension in like IT of just accepting those at face value. But I think, and so I think there is some desire from certain industries, especially in the technological section, to have some kind of backing for these credentials, to make sure that people who show them to you have the skills that they say, and then it's not just a webinar that they attended by some guy from the University of Calgary that right that just said things and then they go, okay, I get a micro credential for showing up, and that's it. So I think that there is a little bit of a desire for micro credentials with some kind of backing and some kind of partnership with the industry. All right, so this is the stackable model. All right, and then the last one is the nested model. So in the nested model, you have your macro credential, and within that macro credential, you will have units where you can earn micro credentials. And there's different ways to organize this. You could do it where these units are mandatory. So you have to finish this unit and get this micro credential to earn the macro credential. Or you could have it where these units are optional, right? So you can fail this micro credential unit, but still get your macro credential. Or you can do a alternative to this micro credential. So if the micro credential is in a focused area that you don't actually need or want, perhaps it could be set up so that you can choose a different area to look at that doesn't give you a micro credential, but does get you your macro credential. So I couldn't find a good image online of somebody who has set up a nested model and produced a graphic designed image of it. So I created my own graphic design image of something that might be of the nested model, or you might have a course like laboratory chemistry from MIT. And in that course, you might have 4 different areas. You have the lab activities, you have the lab quizzes, you have the course lecture, and you have a lab safety unit. And maybe the lab safety unit could have a micro credential with it, so that if you pass the lab safety unit, you get a micro credential saying that you can work safely in a lab without things exploding. And this might be useful for getting a job, cleaning up in a lab. Maybe you can't You don't have your full chemistry degree yet, but you do have at least a lab safety that will get you into labs and get you maybe basic jobs in a lab. So this is kind of an idea of what this nested model might look like with one micro-credential. And then things like the lectures, and the lecture will contain maybe history and other things. History, theory, right? Those are not as, those are not really concrete activities that skills-based things. So it's the skills activities, the competency-based activities like the lab safety that you want to attach to your micro-credentials. Right, so that's my example of a nested model. All right, and now I talked about lab safety, and I've also talked about different levels. So for example, again, going back to building a house, you've got the frame, you've got the foundation, you've got the interior. So level 1, level 2, level 3. But for something like lab safety, what would be a level 1, level 2, level 3? Does anybody want to hire somebody who has the theory of lab safety, but nothing else, right? You want somebody that has demonstrated complete lab safety. You don't want somebody who will only sort of blow up the lab. You want somebody who actually will not do it. So some micro-credentials are going to be either a yes, you have it, or no, you don't, while other micro-credentials will be a level. So when you're looking at creating a micro-credential, think about that. Is this something that there's a level to? Or is this something that it's either yes, I have it, or no, I don't? And if you're not sure, think about level 1 of whatever you're thinking about, and think, okay, does somebody want to hire somebody with just level 1? Or will they always go, nah, level 1 is not enough to actually justify me giving them money? You can consult with industry to see if they would like different levels of a certain skill, or if they just want yes and no, right? So that's a choice to make, whether you have levels or whether you have one. It's going to be different for different courses, for different institutions, right? Okay. Then you have ones that are more like these linear designs. So if you are going to have levels, here's one. You don't just have to have level 1, 2, and 3, right? Here's one with level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And some things have badges in one area, but not in another. So certification has 2 badges. Skills have badges that are not in certification. And proficiency has badges that are, you're proficient in this, but there's no certification for it. So IoT, Internet of Things, no certification for it, but you have it as a skill and you have it as a proficiency. Then you also might have achievements that are even beyond. So you have the certification, and now you're a mentor in it also. So you've got achievement. So the way that this company has set it up, the certification kind of goes along with the achievements. So you can do it beyond the certification. Maybe as you are a mentor or a teacher, it looks like. So this says a linear design, multiple levels. Certification is not the highest level, so you can actually go beyond that with your badges. Not all skills have certification. Achievement level is advanced level of certificates. All right, so that's a linear one. Now a more organic one might be something like this. So if we look at this kind of badge design, we can see that there are maybe 4, maybe 3, right, subtopics. And if you get all 3 of those or all 4 of those, you get another kind of larger badge. So in this kind, you've got kind of these sub badges. And again, this might be the framing, right? The framing, basement or foundation, interior. And then if you have all of those, you get a badge that says, carpenter, something like that. And you can see this is a little bit more organic. Or you can have people just earning, a couple of badges, and then maybe they're not interested in the final badge. They just want these smaller ones. All right. So that is another way, a little bit more organic way to set up a larger course. And even though you see a lot of micro-credentials here and a lot of organization here, doesn't necessarily mean that, and we're almost out of time, aren't we? Sorry about that. that you have to do that. The last thing I want to talk about was what a microcredential should look like. So here's what we at Dalhousie have been developing our microcredentials, and you have to work with your brand, with the branding of your institution. You have to work with a graphic designer. You have to work with the institution's design team, right? So, or at least you should when you're creating microcredentials. So these were some of the early ones. Then we evolved to this, and now we're kind of into this. I do have here, let me pull this up real quick. If I can. This is the one from University of Calgary. And so this is one that I would say they did not work well. They did not work with the institution to use institution colors. Why are the colors this way? Why do you have one that's a shield, others are square, one has a, right? So these are all different, even though they're within not only one institution, but in one, this is the Office of Teaching and Learning, Workland School of Education, which is where I got my doctorate degree. And I kind of wish that they had done better looking badges. Oh, and this one's a star, right? So as you can see that there's different, I'm assuming that I'm sharing my screen, right? Not just I'm assuming you can see these because I've pulled up my.
Yes, we can.
Okay,
yes.
great.
Yes.
Great. Well, I'm assuming you're not
Thanks,
still
Darren.
on PowerPoint. All right.
No.
So you can see that this is one that did not work with a graphic designer, right? There's no graphic designer that used this font for a badge that would look professional, or this color, fuchsia. Fuchsia, really? Okay, so that is something to consider. So consult the institution's branding guide for the colors. Make sure that you have a clear institution branding name and logo. So we actually want to make sure that our logo is a little bit clearer on ours. So these are still rough drafts here on the left-hand side. Make sure that the colors make sense. So right now this says foundation as gold and silver is advanced. That doesn't make sense. Right? Nobody would put silver above gold. Now, I actually thought that black should be the most advanced, black belt, black diamond skiing runs. So what we actually kind of want to do is send out a survey to people to figure out, okay, what order would you put these in? Would you put gold or black first? You know, so to make sure that people can very quickly get an idea from just looking at something of what it is. All right, so so make sure you have a graphic designer working with you. Get feedback from the stakeholders. Make sure they're professional, serious, they have gravitas. Right? Make sure that you are communicating accurately with that level of colors. And make sure that there's consistency within the institution, which we saw that University of Calgary doesn't have. Revise, revise, revise. So keep, right? That's why we have all these different versions. So we keep doing it and getting a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit better. And we're still not there yet. All right, last one, because I think that we're well out of time. Link your microcredentials to skills-based learning experiences. Choose competencies to microcredential. Choose a digital platform for your microcredentials, Credly, BC Diploma, whatever. Choose how to administer your microcredentials. All right, so those are kind of the big steps. Look at the skills. Talk to the students. Survey your students. Survey the the jobs, the employers that the students are going to end up approaching to help develop the microcredential. All right, are there any questions?
That's great. Thanks so much, Darren. Fantastic. And Darren's contact information is here. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. There's been some good questions and comments added into the chat. A comment about from Mandy earlier, who wasn't able to stay on the full webinar, but there will be an email distributed with a recording later today. So please feel free to share with your colleagues. We will also be including a PDF of the white paper that Darren had prepared last year, with a lot of these details included. So again, feel free to share that with your colleagues. Thanks very much for the comments about great presentation. I would echo that. Thanks very much, Darren, for such detail, and it really gives us good kind of practical and tactical insight into how to really begin a conversation about micro-credentials. And wonderful comment from Mimi here. This is the best overview that they've attended. So really, thanks very much, Mimi, for that comment.
Thank you.
And thanks, Kathy. So we'll wrap it up there. I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your days. If it's early in the wee hours, wherever you are, or if you're just wrapping up your lunch hour, thanks so much for joining us. And we hope that you'll perhaps consider joining us for a future webinar. So take care, all the best, and thanks so much, Darren, again.